Welcome to Maya. We're live once again for part 2 of our interview. And I'm hoping the internet's going to hold out. I mean, it's the first, or well, maybe the second day of lockdown here in London. And of course, everybody's been required to stay at home if they can. So I think everybody is online and, we're experiencing that. That ripple effect from that. But welcome to Maya. Welcome. I'm super excited to have you on the show because we got to chat a little bit before about your amazing goddess meditations, and we only just touched upon that, and I really wanted to delve deeper. And something that I have been having feedback about your meditations is that throughout lockdown, it was a source of great comfort for many. And I'd like just to talk to you about the goddess, and also really how, your background is very interesting because you are what I would say is, have been a leader in business. You have been in the corporate world, very male dominated area, yet you have still embodied this goddess energy. And I think a lot of women out there struggle with that, and maybe that's something that we can discuss today. So could we jump straight in, and could you give us a bit of background about working in that kind of environment and how that's keeping that goddess energy alive?
Yes, yeah. I think that as a child or as a teenager, I noticed that, somehow men seem to draw more attention or seem to be considered more important in certain parts of society that I was part of. And I think to some extent, I then started to try and be like a man myself in some areas of my life. So that meant, I became, although I was interested in literature and poetry, I think I gravitated more to a subject like engineering, because I felt that there was something in there that would give me safety maybe, or that would give me status, and that would allow me to stand on my own feet, which I think was something I was really keen to have in my life. And so I started off like that, but then obviously there was a part of me that was kind of a little bit shut down as a result of that. And I felt that in different ways. It was almost like part of me was missing. And so that kind of started a journey, and I started doing meditation and lots of different ways of learning about myself. And through that, it started opening more. And I became really passionate about, about the practices that allow us as women to embody the feminine energy in our lives and to kind of nurture and value it. Because sometimes we forget how important that energy is because we can be too focused on results and achievements and what's being done, but we're not looking enough into how we are, the being energy, which is more of a yin aspect, which is the feminine, right? So that balance became really important to me, and that's why I started leading circles, women's circles. And they gave me an option or a way to be with myself, with other women, and to create that container for each other where we mirror to each other, the importance of self-care and hold that space. It was almost like a discipline of creating a space where we nurture ourselves. And and the audiobook that you mentioned came out of that, right? I was approached by Penguin, again, in a very feminine way, like kind of just, they came to me. I didn't have to go out and push for something. It just naturally happened. And that's something that I've noticed happens a lot when I start doing those practices, is that life suddenly brings opportunities to me versus I have to go hunt for things. And so this project came in that way, just during lockdown. And I think it's beautiful that women have had an option to practice self-care or nurturing their energy bodies from home in that way, using this audio tool. Yeah.
So that's interesting that you talk about the way that in which that you know, when we're embodying that energy as the goddess, that things, you know, come to us, that we attract, rather than us going out and, you know, having to get or hunt and that masculine energy. I really hadn't thought about it like that before. And so, you know, you work, I know, with a lot of women who are in high kind of stress level roles, professional roles, corporate world. How do you support them in bringing more of that energy, that goddess energy, into their world? How does that work?
Yeah, it's really just, I mean, each person can find their own way of doing that. What I offer is some practices that help us to reconnect to our bodies, right? Because as women, we have a physiology, like our bodies are different. Biologically, we're different. We have a womb, we have hormones, we have a cycle. And as soon as we start to relax our bodies and to kind of soften, you know, we suddenly start remembering the frequencies of who we are. It kind of helps us to get out of the mind, and it helps us to relax the belly, and it helps us to breathe into the womb and to breathe into the heart. And then suddenly we reconnect with that flow of nurturing energy, which is very much the essence of who we are as women. We are fighters as well, and we are warriors, and that's a big part of also what I work on in the circle, what we elaborate on, is that, you know, we can be both in that nurturing and caring energy, as well as in the warrior energy, where as women we need to learn how to set boundaries, how to be clear about how to respect our space, and that's very much part of that as well, right? So there's practices that support our connection to the body, to breathing, to self-touch, to self-care in that way. And of course, we always use music as well, which is such a good way of flowing, you know, energy. And then, of course, there's more energetic exercises where we can reconnect to how it feels like to truly be in our power and to appreciate who we are and to value ourselves, so that we are clear about what it is we're willing to let into our space and where we want to separate or be clear that, you know, that's not something I'm going to tolerate or let into my field. And that's also so important for us women to be doing, because we are in a way then setting an example for other women, but then also creating a field of positivity in our lives where where we are empowered and we, you know, choose the reality that we are living from. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I like that about, you know, being the example. And this is something that, you know, going back to the goddess meditations and having these archetypes and being represented for women to aspire to connect to. But also, it's interesting because when we start doing that, then our children, our younger generations, are going to start connecting to that goddess power, rather than, you know, some of the archetypes that might be out there right now. And can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how you decided which goddesses you were going to use, and on what that process and how that shows up in the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have, like, throughout time, I kind of connected to some mythologies and stories, and they tell us so much about, you know, our potential as humans, our potential as goddesses or gods in training. And so I use those stories to inspire and to remember, you know, the qualities that we have within. And like you said, you know, children in a way naturally are confident of their sovereign states. They're confident that they're unique and powerful and very special, and they are demanding in that way, right? And so you see, you know, I see that in my daughter when she sits on a chair and she says, "I'm the queen of the castle," and it's very clear that she's a queen, and and she has no insecurities about that. And so then as we grow up, sometimes we start to fit into a mold, fit into a role, and we kind of forget the innate nature of who we truly are. So the archetypes are here to remind us of that. And then there is a journey sometimes of just going back to the true self, because it's always been there. So we don't need to become something. We just need to, unlearn some illusions we have about who we think we are, to remember the greatness of the beauty that we are truly holding. Is the internet holding up with what we're talking about?
Yes, I think just about. Tell me, Tanmaya, who's your favorite goddess? Who's your favorite, and why? As a young girl, and maybe as now, is it the same?
That's interesting. As a young girl, I was I don't think I was as aware of as now of goddess, but something that I found really fascinating, and it was symbols. And I studied, I wrote a whole paper about symbology and Carl Jung when I was in high school. I think it's the equivalent here in English. And it was something that was really fascinating me. And so in a way, I found that the symbology of the goddesses is really, what draws me in. And there's like kind of a never-ending flow that comes with that. And so my favorite god is hard. I can't choose in that way, but I feel very drawn to the Egyptian pantheon, of course, because that's kind of something I feel like almost like familiar with, or it's like an energy of like family. And when I first went to Egypt, I went to a temple there, which is called it's the Isis temple, and I also went to the Hathor temple, and those two places were kind of really struck me very deeply. I had a very powerful experience in both places where, in the Isis temple, I had that experience of going to the chamber where, the priestesses used to operate, and really sensing the responsibility we have as women to protect and to hold space both for women and men and the children, of course. But the message, the information, or what I felt also Isis was, really stands for is not just, of course, the nurturing, but also the warrior energy, right? And that balance is something that I find really fascinating, and that we really as women benefit so much from embodying, right? And really, it was also about learning how to protect men, because sometimes as women, we go down the avenue, and I see that unfortunately quite a lot in circle movements, that we start kind of separating ourselves from the man, or creating it's like, oh, the goddess, it's just the goddess that create, but we can only create as men and women, and that balance of divine masculine and feminine within and without is just so important. And I felt that the information or the messages I was getting from my explorations with Isis was really that we need to protect also the men, and to take them under our wings and to nurture, because from there we can create a new vibration on this planet as well, when we respect them and when we see the value that they bring into what we're creating together. Yeah. So
that's so powerful. And I think for me, when we honor the men in our lives and we treat them as kings, and they're obviously treating their women as queens, what influence that is on the children, and the influence that has on everybody around them. I mean, just that mutual respect and that love and that compassion. Yes, we are different as men and women, but we can, when we come together, we're so powerful, and it's just the most beautiful thing when it happens. And I want to see more of that. And I really like the goddess meditations for that, because the ancient goddesses, and I felt this in your meditations, were like standing in their goddess power, and it's like, the gods were like drawn to them, and then together they were like great. It's just, I love all of that. It's so powerful and magical. Very much so. And it's so interesting you talk about the Egyptian influence, and I remember as a young teenager, I had an image of Nefertiti on my bedroom wall, and I painted the whole room orange and blue because, you know, she often wears the blue hat, and I was very influenced by her in my early teens, you know, just how vibrant and how strong she was. I didn't really know it at the time, but, you know, looking back, that influence was very strong, that archetype, and so powerful. And that's what I've noticed in the reviews that I've had, feedback about your, you know, the goddess meditations. How would you describe your goddess meditations to somebody that hasn't listened yet? What are they going to receive? What's the, you know, can you give them a little bit of an insight from the perspective of the author?
Well, I feel it's really a chance to help us to open again to ourselves, because sometimes when we live day to day, you know, we get busy with tasks and drama and all of that. And in the meditations, it's really built up so that we can start in a gentle way with exercises that are just helping us to refocus on the body, and then from there we can create, from that foundation we can then explore deeper and wider, you know, how to bring more wisdom into our lives, and how to get inspiration to remember that we are divine beings, and that we can live from that place in our lives, because that's really you know, what these meditations are about in a way. And they're very accessible. I feel like both people who have never done any practices in that way, or also people who are very experienced, you know, will benefit. Yeah. So it's hard for me to describe it any further. I mean, I think sometimes women can be a little bit unsure about how it would be to meditate with particular goddesses, and here it's not so much about the goddess outside of you, but it's really about remembering the goddess inside of you. So we're not doing some kind of, you know, I don't know, conjuring or anything like that, but it's more about bringing, because the energy of the archetypes, it's almost like a vibration, right? It's a vibration, an energy that we can tap into, or a field we can tap into, that we're part of, because we are goddesses, you know, or I sometimes say goddesses in training. And so we can just tap into that field within ourselves, and suddenly you say, oh, it's already there, you know. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really something that I've learned on the mystery school path a lot, is that everything's already there. It's just there's little keys or little techniques and tools, ancient techniques and tools that help and prompt us to open, you know, that ability within us, or that skill, or that strength, or whatever it is. Can you tell us a little bit about how the mystery school has influenced your relationship with goddess and what have you?
Yeah, I feel like the mystery school did help me to move beyond just emotions, because I think what happens is that we start off our journey of healing a lot being preoccupied with emotions in those inner state that can be really strong, and some of us women have stronger emotions than others, but it can be, and I'm one of who has very strong emotions, and I had to learn how to deal with them. And what I learned through the mystery school is that, you know, the most effective way to deal with them is to actually move out of it, and from there to kind of shift, rather than having to go into the emotion and really allow it to kind of wash over us, which sometimes can also, you know, there's a value of learning how to do that, and we do want to kind of allow the energy to flow through us. But as we train as initiates in the mystery school, we learn how to stay connected to a higher kind of perspective, or higher self, we call it, as we experience these states. And then in that way, we can actually allow it to pull us up rather than pull us down. And that's kind of been a key learning for me, because I was already doing circles before I became an initiate, right? And so I see that the circles changed in that way as I started to learn more how this kind of work, you know. And so I I brought that more into the way I run the circles, and that has changed. Yeah.
So I would like to, we've talked a little bit about your role as goddess in the business world. Now, as a mother, we know being a mother or father is one of the most, if not the most important roles on the planet. You're looking after the little gods and goddesses that are going to be the rulers of the planet. Can you give us some insight to the moms out there and the dads out there? How important is it that we honor the goddess? How important is it that we empower this goddess energy on the planet? What difference is it going to make? Or is it just, because I know a lot of people are like kind of like, oh, it's just that, kind of, woo-woo stuff or goddess stuff or whatever. But could you give us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, I'm always kind of inspired by wiser women. When I started this project, the inspiration came from a meditation where I saw so many wise women around me and how they were holding a circle and bringing their wisdom down, almost like the grandmothers. And the vision I have, or the images I have of this grandmother, is this very dignified and warm and open-hearted wise woman that knows about life and that holds herself in that dignity. And from there, the ancient grandmothers, in a way, they're, first of all, we can still work with that energy within ourselves, but then also, if you see that image, and then sometimes as women, we can get drawn into the idea that we have to completely give ourselves up to be mothers. And so, there's these different philosophies of child care, and some of them are like very strict and a lot of rules and a lot of boundaries and sleep training and all of that, which is one. And then there is the other side, which is like the attachment parenting, where we go like completely all in, whatever the child needs, and in that moment we give it. And so and every woman has to find their own balance within, and I would never interfere with any kind of decisions when it comes to that. But what I always kind of ask mothers who come to me with that question is, what are you teaching your child about how you value yourself and how you value them in the relationship that you're creating together? Because if you completely give up your own needs and you don't teach the child that it's important to look after your own needs, what are you teaching the child? And then on the other hand, if you don't look into the child's needs and what the child needs in terms of nurturing and attachment, obviously there is another there's kind of that fine balance to find there. And when we flow from the goddess state, it doesn't have to be a dogmatic decisions of it always has to be this and that, but we can come back to that more like inner guidance and intuition that we naturally have as women, right? And then start to work towards bringing that into our lives on a daily basis, so that we don't have to go look at books or other teachers to teach us how to be with our children. But it does start with us, and if we are completely depleted, we might have given everything to the child, but then there's nothing left for us, and that also obviously gets passed on to the child if we're tense or unhappy or maybe not present in our playing because we just didn't get our cup filled. Yeah, so it's a balance. Yeah,
I think this is one of the most important lessons, and it keeps coming up actually in all of these interviews, no matter who I speak to, is this: if we're not looking after ourselves in a certain way, if we're not being kind or nurturing ourselves, if we're not treating ourselves well, whatever it is, then that is is going to be learned by our children. Whatever we are doing is going to be learned. It's not what we're saying that matters, because as we know, it's like, okay, we can tell people you should do this, but then if we're not doing it, it doesn't happen. And this is so valuable. And I often see this a lot in clients that come to me. And, I'm always keen to remind moms that they're doing such a fantastic job, and it's okay to have your own time, and it's okay to have, things that you love in your life, and, all these, things that are so important, because then the children know, okay, well, mummy knows how to look after herself, and oh, I'm going to do that too. I know that it's okay to do that. It's like permission, isn't it? It's like, it's okay to do that. It's not selfish. It's not putting yourself first. And I love that. And coming from that goddess state, love that. So interestingly, we've only got a few minutes left, but I would like for you to just share anything that you feel would be important, or you just want to share about goddess, about the world.
Well, when I lead circle, I always have, I talk briefly at the beginning, and it's topic of the day, and it's usually whatever has come up for me in terms of science. And the topic of the day for me today is about relationships, because obviously I talked earlier about how important it is for us to, as women, to be, nurturing with our men as well, and to care for them, to respect them. And yet, obviously, and when we live day to day in relationships, there's challenges. I mean, especially whether you have kids or not, there's different, challenges that can come up. And I learned that there's such a value in being clear with our boundaries as women. And it's something that we sometimes not use enough. We have a tendency of complaining and, maybe being not satisfied with our partners, but we don't always are clear with our boundaries. And for me, there's such a big learning in what happens whenever I start doing that. And, obviously there's a lot of healing that happens as we start doing that, because we remember our power. We also remember that we can be on our own. So there's all those codependency topics that can sometimes come up for us women as well, where we have to let go of those fears of what happens if I set boundaries, right? And trusting that. But this is, in my experience, the key to kind of evolving in relationships, and to really bring it to a level where we as women can fully live our goddesshood, is for us to be clear with our boundaries. And you don't see any of the goddesses, in the pantheons, not looking after themselves. You don't see them showing up, like in some kind of, clothes they hate, or, not having breakfast, or, you would see, when you see those goddesses, the images that we have, they're embodying, they're holding that space. They're saying, no, you can't come in here. It's very clear, unless you bring that frequency that is in line with what I can handle, or I that kind of appreciates me for who I am, right? And so that's a key for us as women, I feel, and to learn how to value ourselves enough to be clear about our boundaries. And just wanted to talk about that today. And there's a couple of exercises that I recommend, and they're usually, I don't know if some of you have been doing the Chido practices that we lead in the community, but this is such a lovely way of remembering to flow chi into our structure, and then to become aware of the space around us, and to kind of, as you do those chi practices, for those of you who are familiar with them, you can literally sense into the space and start to own it and say, this is my space, and I choose what comes into this space, and I choose what I bring into it with my own energy, with my thoughts and my emotions. And that's something I love to practice and share also in the circle. So yeah,
I love that. Yeah, Tanmaya, it's such a great top tip to end on. Thank you. Is valuing ourselves and setting those boundaries. I often say, if there was 3 billion goddesses standing in their power on the planet, we would have no war, we would have no hunger, we would be in Shambhala. So I know we can do it. And thank you for your contribution of these goddess meditations and all the work that you do and Mystery School. It's amazing. So can we let people know how to contact you? Maybe we can put it in the comments box if people want to talk to you about Goddess or have sessions with you. I know you're busy, but I know you do take new clients, you know, when COVID is not, you know, out of lockdown, etc. And also, please check out the Goddess Meditations and download them. They are absolutely beautiful and you will not be disappointed. And please share it as a gift to your fellow goddesses out there, because it really is beautiful. So thank you, Tanmaya.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It was a pleasure to create them. I so enjoyed it.
So goodbye, everyone. We'll see you soon, and we're going to put those comments in the box.
Okay. Take care.